Well, we're down to our last one, and I'm going to let Matt start on this one because I know this is a guy that he likes.
We all have experience with.
We do.
And
We do
stories.
all have experience with it and stories for sure. It is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. It is The Wild, The Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle, his second album. Matt, go ahead and run the numbers, and then I'll let you come in hot.
Yeah, he's the boss. The boss.
Yeah.
It's number the boss. Yeah, you said that. It's The Wild, The Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. Comes in at number 345 in Rolling Stone's list. Best Ever Albums has it number 125 in the 1970s, number 17 in 1973, and number 540 overall. It's an album that I'm not terribly familiar with. Familiar with the a couple of the songs, particularly Rosalita. It's the big song on this. I knew the 4th of July, Asbury Park song, and Incident on 57th Street. I think those are the three that I was most familiar with. Mainly, I think, because I have the Springsteen had in 1985 a triple album, a live album come out from 1970.
Oh yeah, I borrowed that from you.
Yeah, it's great, and so some of those songs are on that. So this is not really the Springsteen that people have come to know and love, and it's right off the bat you get that with the E Street Shuffle. It's like, man, if that's a 70s sound if there ever was. It's just very like Stevie Wonder almost. It's kind of like this guitar tone, the sound that's very. It's kind of jangly, but it's like 70s jangly, and the production and the horns. It's dated, right? So this is a dated Springsteen type sound, and I knew it was going to be like that. I was, I've heard this. His first album is kind of like that too. The first album was Greetings from Asbury Park. And so both of them are very similar to this. And a modern artist that kind of copies Springsteen's, lyrics or the way that he sings the lyrics is totally something like the Hold Steady. If you ever listen to them, it's just
undeniable.
like Craig Finn is totally like aping what these two albums are doing. And I am not a huge fan of that. It's just like, I was kind of, ragging on Joni Mitchell for being too verbose. This is just like, Springsteen's writing like the equivalent of like War and Peace for these songs. It's just like so much stuff, and it's just like the stream of consciousness, which is a little exhausting, to be quite honest. The music is still here, and you could hear the roots and the beginning of what the E Street Band and Springsteen would be in later years, particularly with Rosalita. That's easily the most E Street Band sounding song on this record, for what they would be later on. And there's a reason why that's a staple in live shows. That's just kind of foreshadows what they're doing later on. So it's certainly not my favorite Springsteen. We're going to get to that in a couple weeks when he starts. The next album after this is Born to Run, and it sounds totally different than what this is. And there's a reason why that became the album that it is. But yeah, the accordion. He's using the accordion in here, which
I wrote that down.
a lot. Like not just like for a song, like in a lot of the songs. And I'm just going, I don't think I like too much accordion in my rock and roll. It's just not, it's like this. It's got this Italian kind of. You could picture this like in Little Italy or something like that, like a Lady and the Tramp, kind of thing.
Yeah, is this the first time we've heard accordion on an album?
That's a good question, Josh. It's not something you traditionally hear, and I've heard more flute in my rock and roll than the accordion at this point, and I think I'd rather hear the flute, to be honest. So. There's some great moments. Incident on 57th Street is a fantastic song. The great piano parts. It does kind of have like the John Cougar Mellencamp, Jack and Diane thing, which is the Springsteen thing as well, which is like, let me sing in the third person about two lovers and like their crazy adventures as these crazy kids trying to like, have this last summer together or whatever that they're doing. So, that's fine. But the music of that is really strong. And the 4th of July Asbury Park, like I said before, it is a beautiful song as well. It's got almost like kind of like a country type guitar, in the beginning. It's a little twangy, but a great melody. The accordion kind of throws it off a little bit for me, but it's still a strong enough song that I do enjoy. But the other one's like Kitty's Black. Didn't really know that at all. It's like this jazz lounge type song. Like he's really going in a variety of different areas with genres. So you can kind of hear him trying to, figure out his his lane and where he's going to go. So some stuff here, like there's a tuba, like Wild Billy's Circus Story. Josh, I'm sure you hated that. It's got circus in the title, so but yeah, it's got like the tuba in it, more accordion. So, and New York City Serenades, the last track seems like a song that I should really like, but it doesn't really. It's got a couple of cool parts, but it doesn't really have anything. There's not like a strong hook or melody, or it's just like, again, a stream of consciousness just playing the song. Doesn't really seem to have much of a direction, and just seems, compared to other Springsteen stuff that he does later on, it just seems, to me, it seemed weak. Maybe I would feel differently on more listens, but I was like, oh, cool, he's going to end with like a 10-minute long epic song, and it fell flat for me, to be honest. So I'm mixed on this. I love Springsteen. There's some really good elements here, but it's a far cry for me anyway from what you're going to get with really his next like 4 or 5 albums, which are like,
it's a hell of a run.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. So I'm in the middle.
Yeah, I chalk this album up. The word I would describe this album is shaggy, right? It's very much him, in my opinion, trying to still figure out who he is, stretching his legs a little bit. He's dabbling in different things, like Matt said. There's some jazz here. There's some like 70s, type of sounding songs, and really he's letting the E Street Band carry a lot of the album too. These songs are very long, in my opinion, too long, in fact. Some of them stretch over 7 minutes, or almost like half of them stretch over 7 minutes, and a lot of that is just like the E Street Band playing. So, but you still have the hallmarks of Bruce here, right? You've got, because I call him Bruce, I'm on a first name basis. You have
there you go.
You have his songwriting style, trying to like capture a scene, and the blue collar setting, and those stream of conscious type of lyrics, but they're also telling a story, and all of that is here, but he hasn't quite locked in what his sound is yet. And I think Rosalita is where he is an example of an early one where he did find out what really works well for him, and then I think he carries that over on Born to Run, which is the next album, and really solidifies his kind of personality and style and song style, and also utilizing his voice, where he's not always sounds like he's singing. He's like sing talking in a way, and I think he he sings more on later albums, but he's doing that a lot on this album, I feel like. So I think it's a good indicator, and a not strong early effort, but it's an early effort. And I think probably if I had to go back and listen to Asbury Park album, I think that probably sounds a little rougher than this one even. So I think he's just still refining what he wants ultimately, and the hallmarks are there of who he becomes.
Okay, where do I begin here? Well, let's start with, I by far am the least big fan of Bruce Springsteen on this podcast, which is hilarious because I, on paper, most resemble Bruce Springsteen. I not only grew up in New Jersey, I grew up in central New Jersey, where Bruce Springsteen grew up in Freehold, which is its own part of New Jersey. It's not the Bridge and Tunnel, New York, or the Southie, closer to Philly. It's like its own world, right? I'll never say I grew up true blue collar, but I grew up until the age of 14 when we basically put all of our money into a house to get into the rich district, right? Like, so I lived in blue collar New Jersey, so I get it. I went to the shore every summer and continue going to the shore. My politics in terms of working class economic stuff and blue collar, and social issues, kind of playing it to not, be controversial. Like, in many ways, like, Bruce Springsteen, like, represents, like, where I grew up, right? Just he was there 20 years ago. But it just, like, this album is like all of the stuff that Springsteen has moments of brilliance, but there's like Springsteen-y stuff. And I've long described, like, Springsteen's a guy that writes songs for conservatives to remember their childhood. And like, that's like, I'm familiar with all of the experiences that Bruce Springsteen talks about, like not only just like going to the beach, but specifically going to the Jersey Shore, specifically seeing shows in Asbury Park, specifically getting lost in South Jersey while you're trying to get somewhere, specifically heading into New York City to see something that's there, and being young and doing all of these things. Yet none of this resonates with me because it's like backwards looking music, and like that's
like the nostalgic
just where, and it's like these large character sketches. It's always the same people, like some mechanic, you know, who's just working hard and doing it, who's gonna marry the girl he gets pregnant, some girl who's either like vaguely virginal but like she's dating a greaser because he's got like a real 50s vibe, because 50s, 60s vibe. There's always someone, a girl who's vaguely Spanish, like in all of the stuff, whether it be Rosalita or Maria or somebody. So they're all there. Like there's been people who've said it, and it's not like hard. I could have gotten this out to it, but like Springsteen's whole catalog is following these people like who grew up where I grew up, like getting older, and like it's like they started like being idealistic and, you know, bucking the rules, and then they go to the shore, and then they fell in love, and then they eventually got married, and a lot of times they got pregnant early, and they struggled with money, and they lost their job, and then they wondered about the world, and they did, and like all of his life has been following these characters that I know. But like my life has been defined by not getting stuck in that world. So there's nothing nostalgic about any of this for me. And maybe it's because he's writing about like what I didn't want to become, like literally didn't want to become. And I don't even think Bruce Springsteen wanted to become it, which is the funny thing, because like as time went on, I think even he got tired of writing about these characters, while other people are like, play Rosalita, you know, because it reminds me of, and I think even he's like, oh shit, he's too nice to say it. But you know, it's to the point where even like members of the E Street Band became almost like the walking embodiment of these characters. But like on this one, you got like Bruce Springsteen trying to write lyrics like Bob Dylan, trying to sound like Van Morrison, trying to do like 50s, 60s
Wild Billy Circus stories,
rock with all kinds of shit like Brian Wilson production. You know, Phil Spector is even better. Like it's like Phil Spector production and orchestration with like wanting to sound like Van Morrison and singing, with like wanting to like write Bob Dylan lyrics. Like all of it together, like is what Bruce Springsteen ultimately became, and depending on your take on him, right, synthesized. But for me, what I hear is like second-rate Van Morrison songs, as you guys imagine, way too many words with, you know, like Rosalita's got like all the, you know, like Sloppy Sue and Big Balls Billy and Willie down at the Juke, and you know, it's just like there's just too many words. I don't care about any of them. I almost am annoyed that like my experiences are like nostalgized this way. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. Like even when he writes about stuff that like I totally can understand, like when he talked about like going under the boardwalk and like trying to like make out with, like that is a thing that Jersey kids do, but like in no way like is my experience the same, even though I was probably trying to make out with the same girl Springsteen was in the 90s. I went to high school with, or went to middle school and then knew them throughout high school, even that it's just.
Was that Sloppy Sue, John? Was that who it was?
All of them. But Maria, you know, all of them. Like I knew all of them. Not to mention, you know, Carl the mechanic, and you know Jim the greaser. Although he wasn't a greaser anymore, he was like the kind of tough guy. You know what I mean? Who like, you know, were what I like know these characters. You know what I mean? So it's like that's that.
They're in our fantasy football league.
And like the other thing that drives me nuts is Springsteen like is probably the most identified New Jerseyan in the world, and he sounds like no New Jersey people I know. No matter how hard I try, and I don't have a big accent, I will get asked hundreds of times a year where I'm from, because there's parts that are tells and stuff. Springsteen sings in this bizarre, like it's not even a Jersey accent. It's like, you know, I'll be running in the Chevrolet Rider, you know, that's the side we run. And it's like, what is that voice? Like it doesn't. It's like could be in the Midwest or like the California, but it's like. Supposed to be like
it's the everyman, John. It's the everyman voice.
I guess, yeah, but it's like it gets identified as like,
Well, isn't that what people give him crap for too? Is that like he always sings about the blue collar life, but he never really. I mean, he grew up as a blue collar, but like he's not in that crowd anymore. You know.
Well, I mean, in fairness, when he was writing these songs, he was like he's the real item. Like I'm not gonna take, and that's why he can write about that. And there's a lot of people who like feel this speaks to their experience, but like I said, a lot of times I feel like. It's like Chris Christie, right? You know, that's who says, "Oh man, Springsteen's like the troubadour." Like they ignore like when Springsteen gets tired of these characters, right, and starts writing about, like the world's kind of, and they're like, "No, sing Rosalita or Sandy," like that. Just nothing about this hits for me. Like nothing. I don't like this Springsteen at all. Just like the songs are long, they're tedious. I think the words are corny, overly nostalgic. I mean, I don't mean to beat up on the man because I like Bruce Springsteen as a person a ton. I don't like to bag on New Jerseyans. He also Hold Steady are New Jersey kids who grew up trying to sound like this. Bon Jovi, of course, were equal Central Jersey kids who also grew up in another town, Sayreville, that also is Central Jersey like I am. There's a lot of people that like can embody this, but I always go with the idea that like Jon Stewart grew up near me, you know what I mean, and went one way, right, and I did, and then there was like John Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen. Luckily, I like to think we all grew up as adults who kind of got to the same place in life, but we took different paths. So there you go. End of my rant right there.
What I'm hearing is you have a lot of baggage associated with Bruce Springsteen.
I've also seen Bruce Springsteen as much as nearly any other artist because so many people I know, it's the artist they want to see live, and he is great live. And he's great live while I don't like his shit. And it can be both. You know what I mean? Like it's like that idea that you give your heart and soul to it, like, and as a New Jerseyan, right, you pride yourself on sort of like, we may be this, but no one can say that we're not, the real deal and like an honest, like hard day's work, right? Stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that like I'm sitting around waiting for Jungle Land to play or Rosalita. And like, you can just, it's like there's variety and stuff, but you can be sure that he's going to do like a 50s cover, like Pink's Cadillac, and people are going to be buzzing in the audience like, I wonder if he's going to play Jungle Land. I wonder if he's going to play Jungle Land. And I'm just like, it's like a stick almost for me. And it's like, the stuff that always is more interesting to me with Springsteen is when he gets disillusioned. So like a Nebraska, Tunnel of Love, that's the stuff where Springsteen has to rein in his impulses. And that's the Springsteen that to me is the Springsteen that I understand. Because that's the one who sees like the other side of this nostalgic life and how life punches back. So there is a Springsteen I like. It just isn't this Springsteen.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell us how you really feel, John.
I haven't listened to this album in quite a while. I mean, I know this. It's funny. I probably know this album better than you guys do because, like I said,
this is not one that I would go to. And I have a lot of Springsteen, but this isn't one. I knew what it was. Like I said, like this in Asbury Park. And Asbury Park probably has more songs on it than I'm more familiar with than this one did. But that style is not. I think some of the songs it works for me fine, but it's not why I love Springsteen. But I also like. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Born to Run, he's just like, that Rosalita song? I'm just going to write that 9 times.
Yeah.
And that's... He does variations of it, but that's... like, and I don't mean to minimize it, and we'll talk about that plenty, but like that clearly was, he's like, all right, I'm cashing in all my chips because I'm about to lose my record contract.
Well, he goes...
So he takes the song of fucking Rosalita, right, and then repurposes it as Born to Run, and then writes like
Darkness
Jungle
on the Edge
Land
of Town,
and becomes
the
hugely
river.
successful.
I mean, he's not wrong to do that. Rosalita's the song to pick. Yeah,
but that's the good stuff. He didn't. Yeah. He went with that, and you're right. He's a tremendous performer. He's the one that like. He's still now at whatever age he is. He's like 70 or whatever. He's still doing 3+ hour shows. Like, and I've seen him plenty of times. The guy is unbelievable what he does in show. Like, there's plenty of young acts don't do that. They're like, they do an hour and a half, and that's like, wow, that was a long show. No, Springsteen. So he's the real deal. I get the nostalgia. That's totally not you, John. I kind of like stuff like that. I don't mind.
And don't say.
He's very earnest, and I think earnest can be a tricky thing in music. I think that
Not always, though. He's not always earnest, which is why I like when he doesn't go earnest.
Right, but I'm thinking about like the stuff that he's most well known for, the stuff that's most critically revered, and the stuff that people love seeing in concerts. And when you see him in concerts, he's kind of like he's like a preacher in the pulpit, like come on, and he's talking about the power and the joy and the magic of rock and roll. He says all these ridiculous things, but he does so in a way, at least for me, that he makes you believe it, and it makes you like a convert, you know. And he's got this aura that's really hard to pull off. And that's why the only other person I've seen even come close to doing something like that is Frank Turner, and he's another artist. It's more modern that does stuff that's very very Springsteen-like. Although he's not always the same. Turner's more of a punk background than Springsteen, but it's the same
loose punk background.
He wasn't. No, he wasn't a punk band, dude. He started off as a punk guy.
He was. I'm talking about the Frank Turner that you're referring to.
No. Right,
but that's far away from.
Yes, but he started. But he's comes from a punk background, and he
does. The Third Eye Blind guy came from a hardcore band, so it's like yes, they did, but the Semi-Charmed Life ain't what he was then,
No,
so.
but anyway. So the point is that it's really hard to do that well and get away with it and be genuine and make people believe it. But Springsteen does that in spades. Like his shows are unreal. But I wouldn't go to a Springsteen show to see him play pretty much all of these songs. Maybe a couple of them, but you're there to see the other stuff, and that's what he is who he is.
Well, he has like this mythology around him almost that he's built up over the years, and that people associate with him, and it seems like Springsteen is very personal to a lot of people as an artist. I mean, they made a whole freaking movie about this kid in England who became a big Springsteen fan and came over to the U.S. and he was of Indian descent, I think, or something. And it was a fine movie, but that's an example of what I'm talking about.
People think he's a god, like he's like god-like figure in music. That I don't know. There's not a whole lot of people that have that. People put him up on a pedestal like that.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, beforehand, I sent these guys a clip from a pretty infamous South Park episode in which it's about South Park talking about Family Guy, and the gist of the episode is that most of the guys on South Park are the characters are fans of Family Guy, but Cartman, whenever he's shown something by Family Guy, they show it. And they're like, oh, that's pretty funny. And he goes, stuff like that. I feel is my role in Springsteen for this. Like I appreciate that a lot of people like it, and I can't say it's bad, but a lot of Springsteen's catalog for me is sort of like, yeah. And this was like more so of, this is like, when he finally, to follow that analogy to the end, when Cartman finally goes, stop saying like that I should like this. No, that's how I feel like about this one.
Too much sloppy Sue.
You didn't see the Van Morrison thing? My God, like he's
no, I did actually. I forgot about that. When what was it? In particular, it was Kitty's Back. That song, it's like this jazzy, upbeat kind of thing, and I definitely it's like Moondance type Van Morrison, which I was surprised
liked.
And I wouldn't have said that prior to the podcast because I didn't really know Moondance Van Morrison very much. But I heard that, I'm like, ooh, he's got Van Morrison thing going on there. So I definitely picked up on that.
I even think Born to Run, Darkness on the Edge of Town, Springsteen is like trying to write songs like Bob Dylan and trying to sound like Van Morrison. Like even then, I always have felt that way. Always, yeah. And to the point where like I was laughing thinking about like pulling lyrics from this, and I was doing a Springsteen voice, and I know how to do his voice more because it's there. But like I realized how much my Springsteen voice was basically my Van Morrison impersonation, just with like a growling sound to it, you just have to like add like a forced labor to like what you're saying, like as if you don't want to enunciate any of your words, but in a different way than like, Van Morrison just made AH sounds, and play stuff like ha na ha, his is more like sounds or sounds, that's the Springsteen sound. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's that funny SNL skit where Beck Bennett does Bruce Springsteen recently that I think of.
Well, and Ben Stiller for me is the ultimate Bruce Springsteen impersonation. I think he has it down. When he, he's got like his voice, his cadence, sort of like all that different stuff. So maybe I'll link something on there. But
put that up on Spotify or on Twitter.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, I'll put it up, and you'll probably get a chuckle out of it because it's pretty funny. Yeah. So. So yeah, I can't say I recommend this one. I also don't
Really?
recommend. I also don't recommend the 10cc. There will be. I think even Springsteen likers, I think will kind of understand where I'm coming from. It has nothing to do with his connection to the audience, and I respect it and stuff. It's just, and if you don't, I mean, the honesty is you can't tell me how I'm supposed to think about my own childhood.
I also love Springsteen, and everything that you said, I'm like, yeah, I hear you. Like, I can't argue with what you're saying. Like, it's just as, but to me, it's about the music and it's about the feel at the live show. That's just like, he does something that few artists have ever been able to, that I've been able to see live. He's special for that. So.
I mean, we're going to be covering all of his albums too. It looks like in this run from the 70s
he's got 5,
into
right?
the 80s.
He's got the next, from Born to Run Darkness, Born in the USA, Nebraska, and the River. Yeah,
Nebraska's before Born in the USA, isn't it?
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But no Tunnel of Love. No,
the River.
Did you like that?
Did we mention the River? That's in
the River.
There too.
That's
the River's on there too. Yeah.
John, did you like?
That does have the best ever depressing New Jersey experience song ever in the River, which I actually used to teach in my English class for poignant the line, and I got Mary pregnant, and that was all she wrote. And for my 19th birthday, I got a union card and a wedding coat. Is like the ultimate blue collar set of lyrics about where I grew up. That does hit.